Hello everyone, today's video is the M1 Abrams. The M1 is a MBT or main battle tank that is used for destroying defensive fortifications and anti-tank warfare for offensive operations. And it can be used for defensive operations where it will be using its 120mm smoothbore cannon, a coaxial 7.62 caliber and a 50 caliber machine gun while trying to stay mobile using its very powerful 1500 horsepower turbine engine. Development. In the 1960s, the United States Army and Bundeswehr, which is German for Armed Forces of the Republic of Germany or West Germany, that collaborated on a single design to replace the M60 tank and the Leopard 1 to counter the T-62 Soviet tank. The resulting design was the MBT-70, which incorporated new technologies like the hydropneumatic suspension that provides a better quality ride in a cross-country terrain, and also allows the driver to raise and lower the tank as needed, which helps with shooting at angles like if you're on a hill, either a decline or incline, where you normally can't reach a certain angle to shoot. That hydropneumatic will allow you to raise it up and down just so you can actually reach those angles. A new 1500 horsepower engine that could reach 43 miles per hour or 69 kilometers per hour. And the American version used a 152 millimeter gun. By 1969, the design was quite capable, but the rate and budget continued to grow, and it ended up costing roughly 5 times more than the original estimates. And it was put on suspended by the DoD, and it continued on a austere basis until January 1970. When the partnership ended with Germany, the U.S. did try to continue the project and changed its name to the XM803, but it was eventually canceled on December 1971. In January 1972, the Army began a brand new project called the XM815, using the funds from the XM803 or wherever was left of it. The MBTTF, or Main Battle Tank Task Force, and the Tank Automotive and Armaments Command, or TACOM, tried to reach new specific goals. The new design emerged in February 1973, which had to survive any Soviet gun within 800 meters, or 2,600 feet, at a 30-degree angle. The tank would be armed with a 105 M68 gun, which is a licensed version of the Royal Ordnance L7, and a 20mm version M242 Bushmaster from Britain. In spring 1972, the British briefed Major General Desborough about the newly developed Burlington armor that performed extremely well against shape charges. And Desborough was able to convince the Army to incorporate this new type of armor. The project was renamed in January 1973 to the XM1. And on May 1973, Chrysler Defense and General Motors submitted their proposals. These prototypes were delivered in 1976 and started their testing at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, where General Motors XM1 was more superior to the Chryslers. During 1976, the Secretary of the Army and a group of generals visited the Deputy Defense Secretary and Director of Defense Research and Engineering, and they started to criticize their decision of going with the General Motors because they decided they were going to go with a new tank. And they wanted it to have the turbine engine for whatever reason instead of diesel, which the General Motors had, and Chrysler had the turbine. So at the end, Chrysler was chosen, even though it was losing to the General Motors because they had a much better design. but it was already equipped with the turbine engines, so it was a much more easier victory since it's what the government wanted for whatever reason. Like I said, um, now since Chrysler won the contract, they went about to improving the design a lot more, which made it also making it more cheaper, which also really helped win the contract because DoD actually believed they were the only ones that took it seriously. Between February and July 1978, 11 XM1 prototypes were produced, during which the engine was having some serious problems, which is normal for turbine engines. Even now, they can still have a lot of problems if they're not maintained properly. And it was quite obvious to no other countries that I heard of, except for like one nation that used it briefly, that uses a turbine engines in their own tanks. Now, I'm not talking about the Abrams. I'm talking about the nations that actually make their own tanks, like Britain, Germany, France, Russia, China. You don't hear them using turbine engines anymore. Uh, the only other nation that actually did use turbine for a bit was the Russian T-80, where at first they used the turbine, but they hated it and they switched back to the diesel because they were also having the same problems. The main problem for the turbine was just the airflow. Uh, the engine was sucking too much fine dust and other stuff, which clogged up the engine. It caused a lot of problems. That was the main problem why the turbine had problems. Production. In May 1979, the tank entered a low-rate initial production, and between 1979 and 1985, a total of 3,273 M1 Abrams were produced, and it entered service in the 1980s. About 5,000 M1A1s were produced between 1986 to 1992, and it featured a brand new M256 120-meter smoothbore cannon, an improved armor, a CBRN production system, depleted uranium rounds, and other classified materials. The M1 and M1A1 totaled around 9,000 tanks, which cost around $4.3 million per tank. Now, the tank chassis is quite old, so it will have a total of 26 frontline combat variants and 13 specialized variants that are still in use to this day within our forces and also other countries that bought the tank. Now, I am not going to name them all because that's 39 different variants, which is a lot, if you ask me. I don't believe you really need that many, but it's mainly just for combat variants where they are nothing more than upgrades. Now, I'm going to give out a few. You got the M1 and M1A1, obviously. The A2 with improved fire control and second-gen depleted uranium armor. A2S with improved combat capability and reliability. A2 SEP version 1, which is an update of the AIM XX1 refit. A2 SEP version 2, which is an upgrade for the A1s and A2s. And also the A2C, that is the latest version, upgrade for the M1s. The E3 is a project for the M1A3 with a modular design for a new tech to be incorporated quickly. And then for the support, you have the M104 Wolverine, where it deploys a armored bridge, and a USMC assault breacher M1150, which is an AEV that clears minefields and so on and so on. But it's just to give you guys an idea, like why these have so many variants. It's mainly just upgrades from another, except for specialized tanks. In 1992, the M1 Alpha 2 entered production for a little bit, only producing 77 tanks. There are 11 countries that has a M1 Abrams tank. Almost all of them are pretty much NATO nations, with some here and there, like Ukraine, that are not in NATO. but they own the tank. The serial production of the tank ended in 1995, while the exports continued until 2000. Now, all the tanks throughout the years are mainly upgrades, like I said before, and the tanks for the United States Marines are being deactivated and transferred to the United States Army by the end of 2021, mainly due to the Marines deciding to focus on a much more lighter and more mobile force that can be easily transported by ships. So if you hear anything new about the M1 Abrams, it's pretty much an upgrade, really. Supposedly the Abrams X is a different tank that uses a new engine and some other stuff, but right now the government doesn't even have an idea whether it wants to use it or not. But to let you guys know, there's nothing wrong with constantly upgrading your tanks, because it's far more cheaper than just building a brand new tank from scratch outright and then trying to replace them all. But the problem I have with the Abrams really is that it's using a chassis from the 70s, and there's only so much the chassis are designed to handle the weights and other upgrades for modernizing it, because you can only fit so much into a tank before it's okay. You can no longer do this, so we need a new tank. It's better just to slowly build a brand new tank and then just replace them throughout the years, just slowly, until all the Abrams are completely replaced. But that's my opinion. You guys can have something else. That's the point of this video, is offering my opinion and then let you guys think of it. Now, no matter how good something is, sometimes you just need to replace it with something better and more modern. That's easier to modernize it in the future. Cost. Sorry. The M1A1 cost around 4.3 million USD in 1989, and by 2023 the cost of the M1A2 is around 10.66 million USD. The M1 Alpha 2 SEP version 3, an export variant and also an upgrade from most of the Abrams, costs around 24 million USD. The M1 to M1 Alpha 1 that cost 4.3 million USD at first. Numbers ended up being around 9,000 tanks for both the Army and Marines, which had a total cost of $38.7 billion, which they were built throughout the whole 13 years. And that's all the tanks all the M1s, M1 and M1A1 put together. And for the M1 Alpha 2, which only had 77 were built, and the rest were being upgraded, the build cost of the 77 tanks was $820 million. And from what I can find out about the upgrades, it supposedly cost 4 to 5 million USD. So in total of the upgrades for almost all the M1A1s, because we didn't upgrade all of them, some of them were still just that, it ended up being costing, I say you can just say safely roughly 36 billion USD just to upgrade them to the A2s. Now, like I said before, not all the M1s were upgraded to A2s, but that's just me finding the cost on it and trying to give you some idea of how much it costs just to upgrade these guys. Because I mean, after all, we did give just the regular M1s to the Ukraine war. That wasn't an A2 series. Now, from what I can find out, back in 2021, the operating cost was estimated to be around $8,000 to $9,000, and it costs $125 per mile to drive this tank. But now, how everything is here in the West, that cost could be a little bit more because of the price of gas and everything. And as of May 2024, the average crewman makes an hour of $15.63, a total of $52,077 a year, while the tank commander makes an average of $19.44 per hour. But it really depends on your rank, though. You can make a little bit more. I think the $19.44 is the low end of the rank. And they had an average salary per year of $98,019. The training time for the Abrams crew is 16 weeks long at Fort Moore, Georgia. So the total time before you are done with the basic and AIT is around 25 weeks long. So over 2 years of training just to be a tank crewman. Just to let you guys know. Combat record. Now, for a tank this old, it will see a lot of wars, especially since America goes to war a lot. It participated in the Gulf War, where Iraq invaded Kuwait back in 2nd of August 1990 to the 17th of January 1991. The Waco Siege or Waco Massacre. Now, for those who do not know what this is, it was a siege on a religious cult known as the Branch of Davidians back in 1993 for suspecting of them stockpiling like illegal weapons and a bunch of other stuff without an actual proper investigation done. Um, but I don't believe I really see anything like that on the net. When I looked it up, I couldn't find like if there was a proper investigation or done or not. I'm pretty sure it wasn't done. Sometimes the FBI doesn't do that stuff. But it was a 51-day siege which resulted in the deaths of 4 FBI agents and 82 Davidians, which 28 of them were the children, hence why it's called the massacre part, because a bunch of kids died. And the 2 Abrams that were used in this operation were the specialized variant, which allows to breach walls. Then you have the Afghanistan and Iraq joined the War on Terror that started on 14th of September 2001 to the 30th of August 2021, where the U.S. was forced to leave unable to do anything against the terrorists because of how we fight over there. The Egyptian Revolution of 2011, another war in Iraq 2013 to 2017 against the ISIS or Islamic State. The Yemeni Civil War 2014 that is still ongoing for the last 10 years now. And the war between Russia and Ukraine 2022 to present. Now, I will not give out the kill count or how many aimants were destroyed because it could be altered by the government, news, so on and so on. So there's really no point, but these tanks did had a good kill record in the Gulf War, mainly due to being technologically superior to the Iraqi army's aging Soviet tanks that they bought. And they didn't really had not been modernized with upgrades and were properly maintained and trained like they should have been. And we did lose some, but throughout the other wars, especially the War on Terror, we lost them to like RPGs and IEDs, which is improvised explosive device, which is where they use either military grade or non-military explosives. That was pretty much combined with household items. That's what an IED is, if you guys don't know. It's just household items that you can find. Specifications. Now, since this tank is still in active combat situations throughout the world, there won't be any good details on it. And I will only go over the upgraded tanks that is pretty much the only ones in service. And mainly because there's no point in giving out the older variants, because it's kind of the same. The upgrades will be a little bit bigger because of the modifications done to them. The M1A2 and the SCP length is 32 feet, 2.9 inch, or 9.83 meters. The width is 12 feet or 3.7 meters. The height is 9 feet, 5.6 inches, or 2.886 meters. The max speed on the road is 41.5 miles per hour or 66.8 kilometers per hour. That's for the A2. And for the SEP, it's 42 miles per hour or 68 kilometers per hour. For the off-road, it travels at 25 miles an hour or 48 kilometers per hour for both of the tanks. And they do use the same engine, so it will be the same. The range is 265 miles or 426 kilometers per hour. And the SCP is 264 miles or 425 kilometers. The engine they both use is a AGT 1500 multi-fuel gas turbine with 1500 shaft horsepower at 30,000 RPMs. The combat width is 69.5 tons and the SCP is 69.5 to 73.6 depending on the version it is. The main armament is a 120 millimeter M256 smoothbore gun, a 7.62 coaxial gun, and a 50 caliber machine gun. It has 4 crew, a commander, gunner, loader, and driver. The ammo it uses is a APDSDS, or Armor Piercing Fin Stabilized Discarding Sabot, M829 Alpha 1, Alpha 2, and Alpha 3 versions, M830, which is a heat or high explosive anti-tank rounds. That's for both the 829 and the 830. They both are the high explosive anti-tank round. The MPAT multi-purpose anti-tank, M830A1 heat, XM1147 AMP advanced multi-purpose round, and a KEP kinetic energy penetrator or LRP long rod penetrator sabot round that uses depleted uranium in it. Pros and cons. For the pros, this tank has a proven track record, a 120mm smoothbore gun, armor, multi-fuel turbine engine, different rounds, different variations. The U.S. Army has all the Abrams, crew training, 4 crewmen, no automatic reload. And right now, that's all I can think of for the pros. For the proven track record, this tank has an excellent combat record in the wars where it did not lose a lot of tanks, and it had a lot of kills against targets it was designed to kill. 120mm smoothbore gun. The gun is large enough to penetrate a lot of modern armor, and actually, due to the increased velocity that the smoothbores are capable of doing. Armor. This tank's armor is quite strong, but all modern tanks are mainly strong in the front, a little on the sides, but never strong in the back, especially on the top and bottom. Tanks have no need to have armor on the top and bottoms because it's just, you mainly are attacking fortifications than defending, so you really just need to make them strong on the front and a little bit on the sides so that when they can take a few hits, if they can. And it uses depleted uranium armor in the newer variants. That gives it a extra boost of strength to the armor. Multi-fuel turbine engine. This engine is powerful. It has a 1,500 horsepower, which allows the engine to move a lot of weight at high speeds, especially since this tank is around 70 tons, depending on the variant, and what kind of gear it has on. It can be like 69 tons to 70 and a half tons, compared to majority of diesel engine tanks. And just as the name implies, it can use different fuels, like gas, turbine, jet fuel. Pretty much if it's a fuel source, it can use it, which is handy in cases where a supply is hard to come by for whatever reason. You shouldn't have to get yourself into that, but just in case, you can go around and siphon gas for something and then just put it in the tank. Different rounds. This tank has different rounds for different targets, which is needed because you never know what you may come across. You can come across a tank, APC, IFV, or a bunker. So having different rounds allows the crew to deal with different problems efficiently and quickly. Different variants. This tank has a lot of variants, mainly upgrades, but also for support like minefield clearers and such to help with dealing with certain areas and problems. You can run into a problem you can run into is you have a road and you can't really go around it because there's a river and you got a bunch of trees and stuff like a small little forest along the riverbank and you can't go around it. And there's no other road that's unless it's like miles around because they turn it into a kill zone. But if you have a variant that can deploy a bridge and you have the like I said before the river right there and you got a small little clearing, you can try and get the vehicle, deploy the bridge, and cross it without trying to go through a kill zone in order to try to lower the casualties as much as possible. Army has all the tanks. The U.S. Army now has all Abrams, which is a pro really for them mainly, due to having a large tank force that they can use for a large-scale war that if it ever when it happens. Which means that the Army has enough tanks to last a while if we are losing, especially if we are losing quite a bit to combat, whether they have been fully upgraded to the latest version or not. But it does help if we need to restart the production lines for them and try to replace them because it would take a while just to restart all those production lines and trying to get out the tanks as fast as possible. Crew training. The reason this is a pro is due to the long time it takes to train a crewman. If you add basic and AIT, it takes over 2 years to train someone, which makes them quite proficient and excellent to deal with different situations far more efficiently. And it allows them to know the tank very well, and the guns, the gun, the 7.62 gun, and the 50mm gun, the ammo that they will be using, and they will know exactly what type of round it is, and what their capabilities are. For crewmen, this is a pro because if something happens, one of the crewmen gets killed or whatever, you have 3 men to take. You have one of the 3 guys that can take over the position to continue fighting if they choose to or retreat. No automatic reload. This allows the crew that is properly trained to fire as fast as they can, even more than what the barrel can actually handle. Alright, cons. Now, for the cons, just remember there's always a pro and con for everything. Proven track record, armor, multi-fuel engine, different rounds, does not have ERA or APS, different variants, U.S. Army has all the Abrams, crew training, 4 crewmen, no automatic reload, it's being exported, the chassis is over 40 years old. For the proven track record, the reason why this is a con is due to having a really good track record, which means complacency. In all the years of war this tank has been participating in, where it did really good means it can create a false concept of it. Now, I'm talking about the idea or rep behind it, the narrative, where it did good against tanks that it was specifically designed to kill, like the T-72s, the T-80s and stuff. It was designed to kill that. Even though it was much against much weaker nations like Iraq, Afghanistan and stuff, where they do not have money to keep them constantly modernized, to be maintained properly. The crew and maintenance crew trained and supplied properly like they're supposed to be. But the main problem is that in the West, mainly U.S., where we have a complete false narrative of where this tank is the greatest, it's invincible, it's a game changer, or something stupid like that. Now, this tank is good, don't get me wrong, but when this tank will go up against a nation that can keep everything modernized and capable of hitting us with all kinds of stuff, like Russia and China, they will destroy this tank quickly and with ease. And it will not just be tank versus tank. It will be that this tank will be hit by ATGMs, bombs, artilleries, drones. Hell, like even Ukraine lost some Abrams already to ATGMs, drones, and artillery. Here's a short video where Russia destroyed an M1 Abrams that Ukraine used. Just remember, in a real war, you wouldn't be fighting not only infantry, but tanks too. And then you have other support units, like I was just talking about, that will kill this tank with quite ease, because they're carrying weaponry that is designed to kill tanks, no matter what. Armor. Why this is a con is mainly due to the depleted uranium. Sure, it does add armor, but just to let you guys know, even if the uranium is depleted, it still emits radiation. And eventually it can get up to a lethal dose, even if it's less radioactive than normally, where it will have serious health issues for not only you, but you can emit it to your family and future kids if you have them or when you have them. And in areas this tank has been used, and if it was hit by something, part of that uranium can fall off somewhere. And you have a chance, and if you happen to have a chance to breathe it in, or some fragment hit you and injuring you, well, or somebody else, now it's very harmful. But you don't hear that from mainstream media or government, and you will have serious health issues because of that. Turbine engine. First off, let me get this out of the way before I even give the con for this engine. All right, it is not a jet engine, guys. All right, there's a massive difference between a jet engine and a tank engine, or even any other kind of engine. All right, it's like they never seen a jet engine before. I don't know why people keep saying it. All right, like a bunch of dumbasses. All right, I don't know why. Now, here's a picture of a turbine engine. All right, you'll see a complete difference here. It doesn't have a giant circle in the middle that sucks in a ton of air and expels a ton of air. And now here's a picture of a jet engine, where it's actually like that, where it's a giant circle, a bunch of air goes in, and a bunch of air goes out. The main difference is the jet engine is designed to suck in air, compresses it, heats it, amplifies it to create a massive amount of thrust. A turbine engine does not need that. Now, all engines need oxygen to work, because obviously you need oxygen to ignite in combustible fuels, but not like a jet engine. All right, a turbine and diesels actually needs air filters, so that way the oxygen can be filtered, collecting fine particles to prevent any kind of clogs into the engine. Now, compared to a jet that also has an air filter, but the difference is for tanks and other ground vehicles, you have to remove them and replace them with completely new air filters. While the jet does not, it has actually a part of the engine system. I will have pictures here where the first fan pretty much removes that kind of stuff and it gets redirected through the engine. Sorry, I'm sorry, really. It's just, I have to get that away. I get triggered by this stuff because nobody clarifies it, or they just do not care and just run their mouths. Now, the con is mainly due to having a lot of problems with the air filter for the M1 engine, where it can damage the engine far more easier than the diesels will, because they actually require a little bit more oxygen than diesels. But the air filters just get clogged up quite a lot, so they have to be constantly replaced. Not only that, even though this tank can use multiple fuels, if you have prepared for a campaign properly, like you should, you will not need an engine that can use different fuels at all. And this tank has a very unique sound, so if the enemy hears this sound and they know there's an Abrams, guess what? They can just easily report it to command and hunt this tank down, because it is a giant PR against the United States government because of all the narrative that we created around it. Different rounds. Why this is a con is due to if you have an experienced crew member who has barely any knowledge or training at all of it, then they have no idea what the round is exactly and what it can pretty much do. To a crew that has more than compared to a crew that actually has the 2 years of training and more. For example, let's say you see an APC and you're brand new. Like you just barely got 3 months of training, and you know that all these rounds can pretty much kill it, but you don't know exactly what round is a good choice. These rounds are not a one universal round for everything. All right, there's some rounds that have far more penetration, where others have more explosive mass in them. So let's say you use LRP, a long range sabot round that has depleted uranium in it, and you have this APC in front of you, and you use it. Yes, it will pen the crap out of it, but it will overpen it, and it will go straight through and without ever killing that vehicle and the crew if you happen to shoot the empty space in that area. So now you just wasted a round that's good against hardened targets like tanks instead of a heat round, which has a higher chance of actually destroying that vehicle. So it's a massive con for crew that's not properly trained. Does not have ERA or APS. This is a con to me, not a pro, because even if it does not have a guaranteed of stopping rounds and ATGMs and other weapons that can kill this tank in a single hit, ERAs and APS has like a chance of working completely fine, and sometimes they don't because it depends on where you get hit and stuff like that. You can still have increased survivability of this tank just a little bit more if you have them on, because it can stop that round. If it happens to stop like multiple rounds, guess what? That tank is not going to die super quick, and it can actually do stuff. Now, I believe this tank does not have them due to the government not wanting to spend the money on it, because natures do not care about that stuff. And also, you have the false narrative of this tank that nothing is capable of killing it in a conventional war, which is false. Because Russia's destroyed an Abrams in Ukraine, and even have captured one. And they placed it in a museum called Victory Park in Moscow, where they have it on full display. Different variants. The reason why this is a con is due to having a lot of them, mainly the upgrades. It is over 40 years old, and a lot of money went into upgrading all these tanks to keep them modernized. To me, no matter how much money we have already spent on them, I would have just made a brand new tank after, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years, like in the late 2000s or sometime around 2010s. I would have actually started slowly replacing them with a brand new tank. I would have made DOD pretty much make a brand new tank and just slowly replace them, like I said, until a major war breaks out. The Army has all the Abrams. This is a big con, in my opinion. It's also a pro, but it's also a very big con, because now the Army has all the tanks, not the Marines. That's where the con comes in, which is stupid if you ask me. I know why they did it. It is because the Marines decided that they want to have a much lighter and mobile force that can easily mobilize quickly. And guess what? The Abrams is not light. It is weighing around 70 tons depending on what you have on it. But it is a major con to me, because that means the Marines no longer has a tank, and all their vehicles are now light, like APCs, IFVs, and such. So they have no way of dealing with defenses like bunkers and other tanks easily and effectively. And they will have trouble in major conflicts with Russia and China. All right, tanks are designed to take a beating, destroy fortification and other heavily armored vehicles like tanks and stuff. If you no longer have something that can take a beating and dish out the beating, guess what? Marines will start dying. And you will lose a lot of equipment and people in the process, in a very tense combat situation with another country that is a near or equal competitor. Now sure, you will have the Navy's Air Force, and the Marines' own Air Force, but even they can only do so much support and quickly enough. A tank can help with pushing and defense until that support actually arrives, which will help lower casualties compared to not having them when everything just dies, and by the time the support gets there, what the hell is the support going to do? Because even in planes, you still need people on the ground to direct where the planes need to go and drop their ordnance. Crew training. This is a con due to the long time it takes to train. If a major war breaks out, we will not be able to keep up with replacing the crew, and you will have to drop the time it takes to train them. And guess what? You will have situations like I mentioned earlier with the rounds. But also the crew will not be able to remember to angle their tank a little bit in defensive combat just to give a little bit more combat so it can survive a hit or two. For crewmen, this is a con due to having 4 men that needs to be trained, where if a war breaks out, that will destroy this tank in large numbers in situations like I said earlier. No automatic reload. This is a con because if the crew shoots faster than what the barrel can handle, guess what? That barrel will lose its effectiveness faster, and where it will not hit targets accurately at a large distance as such. Being exported. This is a con due to having our tank that our own military still uses heavily and selling it to other countries. Now sure, it may not be the exact same tank with the same upgrades and such, but it still uses the same tank. That means another country like Russia or China can easily steal the schematics or buy the schematics that we are currently using unless you can replace it with something else or create something else that is roughly the kind of same capabilities, but you still have the advantage over it. The chassis is over 40 years old. This is a big con mainly due to not being old, but it's been around for so long and it's been a lot of wars that we pretty much know its exact capabilities, and that includes other nations as well. So that means they know where to hit us really hard on that tank without needing to have any actual anti-tank ordnance. You really don't need anti-tank ordnance in order to destroy a tank. You just gotta know where to hit it and hit it efficiently enough. Like hell, we even lost tanks in Afghanistan to RPGs, which this tank's supposed to survive, but we still lose it to RPGs and IEDs, which is improvised explosive device. If you didn't know. Before I deployed to Iraq, I was even shown a video once explaining about how dangerous these IEDs were, where the M1 was in a convoy just driving down a road, going somewhere, and an IED went off, and it hit it right beneath the vehicle, and where it actually lifted that M1, like it looked like it lifted up 25 feet in the air. And like I said before, these tanks are around 70 tons. Imagine how much explosive was put there just for that convoy, and how much PR they got for that. It does not matter how good a tank is if it's been around that old and have been used a lot. Everyone will know its weaknesses and strengths, and they will use it to their own advantage against this tank. That's all I can really think of the pros and cons right now. Now this will trigger people, but that's just how reality is and war is. It's never nice, and nothing stays at the top forever. Now this tank is good. I mean it. It did good in the first Gulf War, and the Iraq War against them, and it was doing really good against the tanks. It was designed to actually destroy, and every other war after that. Even though we sent this tank against weaker nations that could not put up much of a fight because they just do not have the money, and they didn't really have experienced men. They didn't have properly trained men. They didn't have properly maintained equipment, the tech, so on and so on. Where they could actually put this tank in its place like Russia or China could. But still, did good without losing a lot in the process. Now, the main problem I have with this tank is the PR. It's just the narrative of this tank. People believe this tank is the greatest, and it's pretty much invincible, and no other tank can match it, which is a false concept. All right, this tank will die in modern tank versus tank. A T-72 can take this tank out. After all, it is whoever sees first, shoots first, wins in modern war. So if a T-72 sees M1 Abrams and able to hit a certain spot, it will destroy it with ease. Here in the U.S., we are in a state of complacency. And when I was in the Army, I was told complacency kills. So why are we in this state of complacency? Weapons of war must always, always involve, because if you do not, you will lose to something that does involve quite quickly and and quite largely. Right now, this tank is so old, even if we upgrade them, it's still not the same tank. It's pretty much still the same tank no matter what. It still have the same weaknesses, still have the same strengths. All right, no matter what anybody says, Russia and China are not afraid of this tank at all. They know everything about it. We need to replace it with something much newer for both the Army and something that allows the Marines to use without compromising much. Alright, this video is getting long. I'm trying to keep it under an hour. So thank you for watching. I hope this video was educational and it made you think nice and hard about this tank. And it breaks that narrative that's been happening. That's the point of these videos. Now, if you like this video, hit that like, subscribe, and share this video. Thank you for watching, and click this video here to watch. Till next time, guys.